Hey YouTube, Ed here with Jack of All Trades and welcome to another video. So today what we're going to do is we are going to talk about the YesWelder Flux-135 Pro. This is a 110 volt flux core welder and it's actually a 3-in-1. So let's go ahead and get right into the video. And welcome back. So yes, like I said in the intro, we've got a YesWelder Flux-135 Pro MIG machine that we're going to talk about today. But before I get going on that video, as per the usual, I got to always ask you to go down and hit that like and subscribe button. Make sure you ring that notification bell so you get notified of upcoming videos. And hit me in those comments if you like these kind of videos and you want to see more of them. Let me know and I will continue to do some. You'll have to excuse the background noise if you hear it. My neighbor is mowing his lawn, which is what happens in the neighborhood. It's no big deal. So we're just going to drive on. So what have we got here? We've got the YesWelder Flux-135 Pro. This is a 3-in-1 machine. It'll do MIG, flux core, gasless MIG. It'll also stick weld, and surprise, it'll also TIG weld. Now, it's a scratch start TIG. It will not TIG aluminum. So if you're going to ask me in the comments, will this TIG aluminum? No, it won't. It will not TIG aluminum. It'll only TIG steel, and it is a lift start. It doesn't have a high frequency start, which means it doesn't have a pedal or a push button or a roller on the handle. It is purely a scratch start, really basic. I am not going to test the TIG. As you have seen in all of my previous welding videos, I am a crappy TIG welder, and I'm not even going to sit here and try to convince you otherwise. I will use the flux core and we'll do a little stick welding with it as well to see how it stick welds. And what we're going to do is we're just going to unbox this thing. We're going to take a look at it. We're going to see how it initially functions, what it looks like when I got it out of the box. And full disclosure, YesWelder did send this thing to me, but you know me well enough now to know that if I think this thing sucks, I'm going to tell you it sucks. If I think it's good, I'm going to tell you it's good. And then I'll continue to use it. I'll use it on small home projects and things like this, but I'm fully expecting that a welder like this would be perfectly at home in a DIY shop situation, just a home shop situation where light welding might be required. And at 135 amps, 110 volts input, light welding is all you're going to get out of this thing. So let's go ahead and relocate the camera. Let's see what we've got in the box here, and then let's get this thing set up and let's do some welding with it. All right, let's go ahead and see what we got in the box here. So you can get this machine on Amazon or you can get it right off of the YesWelder website. So there's a couple of places that you can get it. Really, actually a pretty healthy, heavy-duty box. Of course, you get your instructions. Looks like we get the same ground clamp that you get on all of these fairly inexpensive welders. Pretty light duty, but we are only talking about a 135 amp machine here. Looks like we got the MIG gun. We've got the stinger for the stick welding. And we've got the welder itself. Go ahead and take the plastic off. Now, the one thing I really like about this little welder right off the bat is just exactly that. This thing is little. It only weighs 10 pounds. It's not big. What would I have as a good reference here? So I've got a 6-inch carpenter square here. That'll give you a little bit of reference on how big this thing is. It's really compact. It's really lightweight. It weighs like 10.8 pounds, I think. There's nothing to this thing. It's very, very light, very, very portable. The MIG gun, it kind of looks at initial inspection exactly what you would expect out of a low-cost light-duty welder. It looks just like any other Campbell Housefield or Hobart or any other brand that you might find out there. It's your basic common garden variety flux core light-duty MIG gun. I see nothing that would really concern me. It's got a really light covering on it, which you would fully expect. It does have a replaceable welding cone. It looks like it's standard electrode tips. Doesn't look like anything too crazy fancy or out of the ordinary here. Looks like it'll do the job just fine. So the ground clamp is exactly what I would expect out of a machine of this size and category. It's a pretty light duty ground clamp. Uh, Actually, the clamp has got some pretty good spring pressure. I do see they have the crossover on here, which is really nice with the braided. So both contact points do have connection directly with the cable. Just exactly what I would expect out of a machine like this. Again, the stinger for the stick welding, pretty light duty, really good spring pressure on the stinger clamp. Actually, it's got very good spring pressure. It's heavier than most as far as that is concerned. Other than that, it's a light duty stinger for garden variety stick welding. In the instruction bag here, looks like you get your welding setting chart. So they give you a little bit of chart to give you some really basic welding settings. That might be kind of handy. Looks like you get your owner's manual, which is, YesWelder does a pretty good job with their owner's manuals. Looks like there might be download an Amazon shopping app. You get all that kind of garbage in these things now. And it looks like they give you a couple of extra welding tips, which, that's kind of nice. And I would expect nothing less. Most of these welders do just exactly that. Give you some very, very minimal consumables. So really, all in all, this is kind of exactly what I would expect out of a welding machine of this caliber and of this size and of this category. Nothing heavy duty. This is DIY home shop kind of stuff. You are not going to go out and start a job shop or a portable welding business with this at first glance, although that machine is extremely lightweight and extremely portable. And I bet you it would run really good off of an inverter style generator and should actually be very portable. So if you needed to take it out and do something outside of the shop, you could very easily get that done. All right, so let's talk about some specifications on this thing real quick. Now, like I said, it's 110 volt, so you can run this out of your standard house power. Now, past experience tells me that with these 110 volt welders, it really would behoove you to have a 20 amp outlet or a 20 amp breaker system. Usually, house outlets that are 15 amps just don't hold up to the rigors and stress that's required on the circuit to run even these light duty welders. But it is 110 volt. You can plug it into your standard household outlet. So on flux core welding, you've got 135 amps maximum capacity, and it'll give you a rated volts of about 20.7 volts on it. With stick welding, again, you have a full 135 amps. And on TIG welding, you also can get a full 135 amps. Now at 104 amps in all three of these welding features, you will get 100% duty cycle. That means you could run this thing continuously at 104 amps. When you get up to 135 amps, your duty cycle drops down to 60%. So that means every once in a while, you're going to have to let this thing rest and let that duty cycle catch back up again. You just can't run it continuously at full wide open throttle all the time, which is pretty normal for a machine of this caliber and of this grade. Now understand, you can pick these machines up for about $150 on Amazon, and I will put a link down in Amazon, or an Amazon link down in the description. So if this welder does interest you, use that link. It does give me a little bit of an Amazon kickback if you buy this machine through them. So I would appreciate that just to help support the channel a little bit. So other than that, physical dimensions, it's about 15 inches long. It's a little over 6 inches wide, and it's about 9 inches deep, and the whole thing weighs about 11 pounds. So it's very, very portable. It's very easy to pick up. Shouldn't be a problem carrying that around, and it's certainly not going to be a problem to store. You could easily stick this in a cabinet or a cupboard and put it away very, very easily. Okay, so looking at the front of the machine here, what do we have? Well, you quite obviously have your panel and all your controls and your buttons. Now this connection right here, this is where you put your MIG torch, and it's nothing real difficult. It's actually quite simple to install. You simply take the MIG torch connection, you push it in, you turn it about a half of a turn, it locks into place, it's done. Then you take the control wire, you go ahead and push the control wire in. It only goes in one way. It's got a thumb screw on here for you to go ahead and tighten it down. And that's where the MIG torch goes. Now, for the ground clamp for MIG welding with the flux core, your ground clamp actually goes into the red connector here. I know that sounds backwards, and it is what it is, but that's where you actually put the ground clamp when you are running flux core wire, and it installs exactly the same way as the MIG torch does. Just push it in, give it a half a turn, and it's ready to go. Now, if you're going to go ahead and stick weld with this thing, you go ahead and then at that point when you're going to stick weld, you go ahead and you move this ground over to this connector, and then you put your stinger for your stick welder in here. And then if you're going to run TIG, the ground stays right where it is, and the TIG torch actually goes into here. Now, you're probably wondering to yourself, if this thing will do TIG, quite obviously TIG has to have gas. It's got to have argon gas to make it work. Where does the gas come from? Well, this being a lift start TIG, you actually would plumb the hose directly to your argon tank, and then there will be a little knob on the top of your TIG torch that'll turn the gas on and off when you start TIG welding. Nice thing about this machine is that when it comes out of the box, it's already all assembled. You don't have to put a handle on or anything like that, other than hooking up the actual leads for the welding function itself. This thing comes pre-assembled. Now on the side of the machine here, you've got your door, and this is where your wire would go. Your wire feeder is here. So this is where you would put all your wire feeding or all your wire for feeding so you can core weld with it. The door is actually really nicely built. It swings very freely. It seems like it's fairly solid and rigid, and the latch is very positive. It holds shut pretty nice. All in all, very nicely made. On the back of the machine here, we have nothing more than your cooling fan. You've got some product information on the back panel here, and you've got your on and off switch along with your electrical cord. Very, very simple. And finally, on this side of the welder, we don't have anything more than some cooling fins. So there is nothing more to this machine. This is about as simple and basic as it gets. So let me go ahead and let me get the MIG guns put in here, and then let me go ahead and get some wire fed into this thing, and let's get it ready to weld. All right, let's talk about the settings here for just a little bit, and I hope the fan noise isn't overwhelming my microphone. So you've got a mode switch right over here, and what that does is that cycles in between the three different modes of operation, either stick, TIG, or flux. You just simply push the mode button, and it cycles to stick, TIG, and flux. The diameter button, very, very simple. You can either select 030 or 035 wire. This machine will run either or. So you've got right here, you've got a button that's the wire feeding button. This is for manually feeding the wire. You can push and hold that button, and it'll feed the wire through the cable out to the stinger or out to the gun. You can either do that or you can just simply pull the trigger. And the longer you hold the feed wire button, the faster it'll go until it's going wide open. This button right here, this knob is your feed wire speed button. Now, you don't adjust your voltage and your amperage separately. It's all done with that knob. So when you change this knob to change wire feed speed, it is also changing your voltages and amperages to work correctly. So that's where this little welder setting chart comes into play. So you just take the thickness of the material or however hot you want to run, and you find out what wire speed you need and you set it. So we're going to run wide open. I'm going to set it to 308, which is on this chart here. And that's what I've got. And we're going to see how this thing runs wide open because I got some fairly heavy material. And we're going to see how well this thing burns in. And then we'll try some lower settings just to see the stability of the arc. But if you're not 100% satisfied with the preset settings, you can go into the parameters button here and you can adjust this voltage with the knob plus or minus up to 3. So we can go all the way down to minus 3 volts, or we can go all the way up to plus 3 volts. So there is some fine tune adjusting here that you can go ahead and do. We're just going to set this thing at 0 and go dead down the middle and see how it does, and we'll adjust from there. And then when you're done with your adjusting, it just automatically reverts back to the wire feed setting after just a couple of seconds. And that's all there is to the controls on this thing. This thing is really, really basic. And this is designed and made for the beginning or novice welder. And it really kind of does everything for you. It's got all the settings in there preset, and you really just have to kind of follow the chart and run with it and make minor adjustments from there with your parameter button. So let's go ahead and let's set this thing to 308. Let's get some material on the table here and let's see how this thing welds. So I've just got some 3/16 here. I've got this thing set to 308. Let's go ahead and do a tack and a weld and see what I can get done with this. Well, there's my first real bead with it. You know what? For a first bead, this little machine doesn't run half bad, especially for a little 135 amp buzz box. That's fairly impressive. Now I was dragging that weld. Let's go ahead and push this one and see what happens. Seems like it likes to run a little better when I'm pushing as opposed to dragging. You know, for a little 110 or 110 volt buzz box, this thing doesn't do half bad. It's going to take a little getting used to. I do feel like the wire might be slipping just a little bit, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to tighten up my roller wheels just a little bit. And then I'm going to go ahead and bump up my voltage parameter just a little more. It doesn't seem like the arc is quite as stable as I like it to be. Let's try it again. Well, not some of my best work, but it does weld. The arc is fairly stable, you know, for a little 110 amp or 110 volt welder. I've got quite a bit of undercutting here, and I think that's just because I'm not used to the speed. I'm getting a little better at it. It's going to take some practice. Let's see if I can maybe make this one just a little better. It's definitely got the temperature. There's no problem there. Let's do a little more and see what we're doing here. I'm kind of detecting a little bit of variation in the feed motor. Doesn't seem like the wire's coming out super consistent as far as feeding is concerned. Let me just try bumping the wire speed up just a little, see what that does. Just doesn't seem like it's quite as consistent as it should be. That's actually too fast. Try bumping it down a little. That actually helped a lot. So it was just a little adjustment. That's a much better weld right there. Okay. So it was the settings. Just got to play with the settings a little bit. Not half bad. Not half bad at all. All right, so okay, for a $150 welder, it's not doing bad. It did far better than I actually honestly expected it to, because I've had a few $150 welders in my time and they didn't weld great. There's lots of spatter. You can see here there's a lot of spatter balls, but they knock off pretty easy, and that's pretty indicative of flux core wire. It is going to take some practice, and it is going to take some playing around with the settings to get this thing to weld to the level that I would want to weld with it at. But you know what? For a $150 machine, it's really not a bad machine. And you know what? I can plug it into a 110 volt outlet. I don't need to buy any gas. I can just go ahead and let her buck. What I did notice is this machine doesn't like it when you do circles. It much prefers it when you do a whip weld with it, back and forth. So I did notice that this one right here, where there's a lot of undercutting, I was making circles with it, and it doesn't like that. It much prefers it like this, where I was whip welding. So the more I use this and the more I practice with it and the more I fiddle with the settings, I'm finding the better it goes. It's actually going pretty good now. This last bead's pretty clean. Let me get a good wire brush going on this thing. Not too bad. I've got a little bit of an inclusion right here where I missed a little bit of undercut. But other than that, the weld is pretty decent. It just takes a little bit of practice and it takes a little bit of time to get used to the machine and how it runs. Now I'm running it pretty hot here and I've got my differential in my parameter set to +3, so I'm running pretty much wide open, and this seems like it's done a lot better. It just takes some getting used to. Much cleaner, much better. It's going better and better with every bead pass. So for a guy who's out of practice and isn't welding for a living anymore, that's not a horrible bead. Now, like I said, right there, I've got another little spot where I missed it, and that's my fault. But for the most part, that's a decent bead. I have no problem whatsoever calling that a good weld. And this little box will burn. It's fairly impressive how well it does for what it is. All right, so let's see how this thing will stick weld. Now I've just got some 6013 rod here. That's all the rod I have, but we can certainly give it a try. See how it does. I got it set at 114 amps. We'll see how this thing strikes an arc with a stick welder. That actually works really good. Wow. I can actually go down on my temp a little bit. It's a little hot. Let's try it at 105. Just going to tack this in place. Let's run this weld. That arc is pretty stable. For a 110 volt buzz box, it's actually really stable. You know, that's not half bad. There's nothing to complain about there. It stick welds really nice. Actually come down on the temp a little more. I really like the stick welding function on this. Not bad at all. So one of the things to show on the stick function is on the parameters. You can do your arc force setting, and I've got it cranked up to 10. You can also do your hot start setting, and I've got that cranked up to 10 as well. Okay, so the YesWelder Flux-135Pro. For what it is, $150 do-it-yourselfer in the garage BuzzBox welder, it's actually not half bad. I'm kind of impressed with it. It stick welds really nice. Now, I didn't have any 7018s or anything like that. All I had was 6013 rod. But I mean, it stick welds really nice. The arc is nice and stable. It's very smooth. It's got a really good start to it. I'm just really happy with the stick welding. The flux core MIG takes a little getting used to, takes some fine tuning. You kind of got to see where the welder likes to run. But once you get that down, I mean, that last weld I did, that's pretty legit. And there should be no problem with being able to tackle most of your household DIY stuff. I mean, if you're going to build a go-kart or weld some panels on a car or anything like that, this machine would certainly do it. What it is not commercial grade. This is not something you're going to take on a job shop kind of thing. I haven't got enough time with it to say you could take it, on a remote to do some remote work or things like that. But for a $150 welder that only weighs 11 pounds, and you get the MIG gun with it, you get the stick leads with it, you do not get the TIG lead. And I like I said, I didn't test the TIG because I'm a crappy TIG welder, and I would actually probably not do justice to the machine. For what it is, it's actually a pretty decent machine. I'm fairly impressed with it. So I will keep it. I'll keep it in the shop. I'll use it for various projects and see how it kind of holds up. I still have my YesWelder M&P 200. I'm not getting rid of that machine or anything like that. This is not going to be a replacement, but I'll keep using this to see how it holds up. But I'm really impressed with, for $150, you get a lot of machine here. It's exceedingly portable. It's very small. It's not going to take up any room in your shop. And it does exactly what it does. Now, I've had Chicago Electrics. I've had Campbell Housefields. I've had Hobart little buzz boxes like this. And all they've got is like high-low switches and some very rudimentary settings. This has actually got some better settings. The display is a little nicer. It seems to be a little more refined, if you will. The fit and finish of the machine was excellent. I have no complaints about that, and it ran really nice. And when you get it cranked up, it'll burn. There's no question about it. You just have to fiddle with the settings. And most people who do any kind of welding typically run a few test pieces beforehand anyway. So you would definitely want to do that with this one just to see where the material that you're going to weld likes to be welded at with these settings. The controls are very, very easy. It seems like it's very intuitive, and I'm pretty impressed with the machine for a $150 welder. And it's 110. You can run it absolutely anywhere. So with all that being said, I would have no problem saying go ahead and give it a shot. For $150, you can't hardly go wrong. You can't get a decent welder like this that is multi-process for much less than that. I mean, it really is kind of a jack of all trades of welders for you home DIYers. So let's go ahead and wrap this thing up. Now, if you're liking these kind of videos and you're liking this kind of content, please make sure you go down and hit that like and subscribe button. Make sure you ring that notification bell so you get notified of upcoming videos. It's almost every time I put out a video, people are telling me that they're not getting notified or things like that. So make sure every Saturday morning at 8 o'clock, I put out a new video like clockwork. So just expect it. Even if you don't get notified, the videos are still getting put out there. With that, this is Ed from Jack of All Trades. As always, thank you to my longtime subscribers. Thank you to everybody who watches these videos. I really do appreciate it. And we will see you on the next video.